Hello everyone, my name is Giovanni and today I'm gonna talk to you about It, the new version of the Stephen King's most famous horror romance. This is a movie that someone who didn't read the novel or watched the previous version cannot understand. I personally went to the cinema and watched the movie, and I didn't understand it. I thought it was completely illogic. But then I read some positive comments on the movie, and I thought, okay, there must be something wrong. So I watched the original version of it, the one released in 1990, and after 24 hours I went to the cinema again to watch this year's It, and I actually understood it. I understood the themes of Stephen King's novel. Therefore, it was easier for me to comprehend better what was going on the screen. But first, let me tell you the plot of the novel, of the actual novel. The story talks about this very small city of the United States of America called Derry, and where mysterious things happen. Basically, kids disappear mysteriously, and yes, the protagonists of this novel are 7 kids who are called the group of the losers because they always get bullied by the bullies of the town. So they are called the losers, and they start to investigate on these mysterious things. Why? Because every single one of them has a vision of this paranormal identity that they call it because it's unspecified. Like they don't give it a proper name. They don't give it, and they just call it, like as something that is unknown. Okay, and so everyone has a vision of it under the form of their worst fears. So they see it, each of these kids see it as their worst fears. I'll make an example. Beverly is afraid of her father, therefore sees it in the form of her father. Another example, Billy sees it as his little brother Georgie, who disappeared months before, and about that Billy thinks that it kidnapped Georgie, or worst, killed him. So yeah, this gives motivations to Billy and his group of friends to look for it, to understand who it is. And so yeah, Billy of course is the main character of this novel. So they start to investigate, and I'm not gonna tell you what happens, of course, because that would be considered as a spoiler. The novel, basically, the novel has got 2 different narrative lines in 2 different periods of the losers' lives. So the first period is in the 1950s. In the 1950s, when the losers are 13, 12, and they get to know it for the first time. And the second period is when the losers are adults, when they are 40, in the 1980s, when they meet together, when they rejoin again, because apparently it came back. and it's interesting. So this is an interesting parallelism of of um, of uh, um, of the present. So when the losers are adults, and the memories of the losers when they were kids, and when they got to face it for the first time. I forgot to say something. Let's say the form that it prefers the most is the form of this dancing clown, Pennywise. So he's referring to himself as Pennywise, the dancing clown, but he's not actually a clown. He's a paranormal entity. So yeah, it must be a kind of devil or demon or something else, you know. But yeah, this is not specified in the novel nor in the movies. Let's start talking about the positive aspects of it 2017. The quality of the image. I have to say is pretty high. And since the quality of the image is high, so is the visual effects, the special effects of the movie. And yeah, of course, it indicates that the movie is not a low budget movie for sure. So yeah, so the visual effects were used pretty well, I have to say. The acting of the kids was actually pretty good. It was actually pretty good, as opposed to the acting of the kids in the original version of the movie, the one released in 1990, which I have to admit really disappointed me. This acting was much better. We got the idea of the group spirit, you know, of the group spirit. They are losers, yeah, they are losers in front of the bullies. They are losers in front of the others. But when they are together as a group, they seem to have a feeling, you know. Some of them know each other since a lot of time, since they were babies, let's say, and they make really funny jokes about Eddie's mother, for example, or Richie's sister, who we don't see in the movie, but yes. So I think the acting was really good. I have to say also the acting of some secondary characters. For example, Beverly's father, his acting was actually impressive. It was actually impressive. I really liked it. But yeah, this was the last positive aspect. Now let's enter into the negative aspects of this movie, which are pretty important, I have to say. The editing. The editing of it 2017 is completely shit. Is completely shit. Continuous mistakes. But I'm not talking about simple mistakes, obvious mistakes. I'm talking about obvious mistakes. Ben putting a photo in his pocket in the first shot, and then in the second shot we don't see the photo. There is nothing in the pocket, it's completely empty. And we see it clearly. And like I've got many other examples. For example, Richie, in one shot, Richie looking at the door, for example, and in another shot he's looking at the window. And these mistakes are repeated throughout the whole movie, and this is something that really pissed me off. Because it distracted me from the view of the movie, exactly, and that's something that really pissed me off. I didn't say that there is a difference between it 2017 and it of 1990. It of 1990 has this parallelism that I talked to you about a few minutes ago, of the two different periods of the losers' lives, when they're adults and when they're kids. So yeah, they have the memories of their childhoods and when they met it for the first time. Here we don't see any parallelism. The new version is divided into two chapters. this is the first chapter, the one which was released a few weeks ago. And then the second chapter will be released, I don't know, in 2018, 2019, I don't know. The first chapter is, of course, when the losers are kids, and the second chapter will be 30 years later, 27 years later, when they will face Pennywise again. The mistake with this new interpretation of the story is that chapter 1 is set in 1989, not in the 1950s, like the novel, like the previous version. Therefore, the second chapter will be set in the present, whenever the movie will be released, when the losers will be adults. And I think this is very risky. This is very risky. It's a risky move by the director Muschietti and the screenwriters, and it's actually something that leaves me without words. Of course, let's say that it creates limits in the story, in the actual story, in the novel, and I'm afraid we are gonna see these limits in the second chapter, when they're gonna set the comeback of Pennywise in the present. And I have actually no idea of what's gonna happen on the screen. So, this is a limit, this is a limit, this is a defect, and in my opinion. Okay, one of the most important negative aspects of this movie is the plot holes. By plot holes I mean mistakes in the screenplay, a lot of mistakes. For example, Mike is meant to be one of the main characters. He's introduced... wait. They introduce him in the first 10 minutes, and then he sees it under the form of his parents dying, because that's his worst fear. And then he sees Pennywise, the dancing clown, in the entity's original form. Well, not very original, but yeah. So yes, he sees it, he gets to know it, and then he disappears. Mike disappears from the screenplay. For 1 hour and 30 minutes, we don't see any Mike in the movie. I almost forgot about him. The first time I watched the movie, and also the second time, I completely forgot about him. He was introduced at the beginning, he saw it, and then he disappeared. When do we see Mike again? When the losers, who were 6, of course, before Mike joined, the losers find of the bullies they've always run away from, and next to it the bicycle of Mike. So, what do? They decide to save Mike's life. Mike is not their friend. They know him because they see him very often at school, but Mike is not their friend. He's not their friend. They decide, so randomly, to save his life, to face the bullies they've always run away from. So, okay, this is the first part. They save Mike, and then they start with Mike, they start talking about it for 5 minutes. They talk about it, and also Mike talks about it and the strange things that happen every 27 years in Derry. Mike is talking about it. But the losers don't ask questions to Mike, you know, like, how do you know these things? Have you seen it? No question. Mike contributes to the conversation, talking about it without no one asking what the hell. And then Mike, after 5 minutes, he remembers to mention that he saw Pennywise. Okay, wait a moment. Hold on a second. Really? Like, are you serious? There is something that doesn't make any sense here. I don't even need to explain it, because there is no explanation. Okay? Like, at the same time, it's obvious, but there is no explanation. So, I don't know, this is one of the many mistakes, you know, the screenwriters forcing things to happen, you know, in the way they want. For example, in the scary scenes, so of course the most important theme of Stephen King's novel is together we are strong, together we can make it. Therefore it scares the kids by taking them individually. So it scares them individually, not in group, okay? It happens just once, or maybe twice towards the end, of course. So individually. And what do the screenwriters think of a way to separate the kids in order to create scary scenes? What do they think? Look, for example, Richie. They put a voice of that says Richie. Richie is with the group, right? Only Richie can hear that voice. So Richie, what does he do? He goes towards that voice without saying anything to anyone. And when Richie leaves the group, nobody realizes that Richie left the fucking group. He goes towards the voice, and there's the scary scene. And this happens so often during the movie. The same thing, it's almost predictable, you know, that something bad is gonna happen. So it's not a jump scare anymore, because you are ready for it, you know. A jump scare is when you're not ready for it. Even towards the end, when Billy says, guys, we need to stay together, this is the only way to defeat it. That was bad. To defeat Pennywise, let's say, okay? To defeat the Pennywise. And then Billy is the first one who leaves the fucking group. He's the first one who leaves the group. Because he sees Georgie, his little brother, and he knows it's not Georgie. This is just too... It really made me angry, you know, especially the second time I watched it, because I realized better, you know, what the fuck was going on the screen. Last negative aspect. I don't want to bother with the other negative aspects, because this movie has a lot. The atmosphere. So, I'm gonna say it very simply. A horror movie needs to have a horror atmosphere. A comic movie needs to have a happy atmosphere, a comic atmosphere, you know, where the joke is behind the angle. A dramatic movie has to have a dramatic atmosphere, you know, sadness, tears. This is meant to be a horror movie. I read the best horror movie in the history of cinema. Okay. But where's the fucking atmosphere? Where's the atmosphere? There is no atmosphere. Mood swings. Continuous mood swings. There is no horror atmosphere. So yeah, you can say it's the best horror movie in the history of cinema. But the problem is that it's not a horror movie. It's not a horror movie because it does not have anything to do with horror. It's just made out of jump scares, and that's not horror. If we look at some of the most famous horror movies in the history of cinema, we see The Exorcist, Shining, Rosemary's Baby, Halloween, and these are all movies who make the atmosphere one of their strongest points, one of their advantages, you know. There is this creepy atmosphere with like that we can feel throughout the whole movie, and that's what makes those movies horror, terrifying. anxious. That's the thing that really that really bothered me about it 2017. If I have to compare it to the original version, the one released in 1990, I'll go for that one. I'll go for that one because I enjoyed it watching. I enjoyed it watching more than I did with it 2017. Don't get me wrong. I advise you to watch it at the cinema, guys, because it's an entertaining movie. It's an entertaining movie. At some point, it's also funny. Like the quality is good, so you watch it with pleasure, you know. So I'm not telling you to not watch it. You should watch it. You should watch it. Even because maybe the second chapter is gonna be a masterpiece, and you can't watch that if you haven't watched the first chapter. So I'm not saying that, okay? This is just one of the millions of opinions in the world about it. So yeah, but if we see the ratings 7.8 to this 8 and the previous one 6.9, I don't agree. I think it's the opposite thing. I think it's the complete opposite. But yeah, this is just my opinion. I hope you liked this this review of It 2017. I hope you agreed on most of my points. I don't expect you to agree on all of them, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.